So let's move to 2018.
Okay.
Do you remember any of your dad's like medical spells? They would call them episodes.
Yeah, I mean, he said he would get sick and he would have to lie down, whether it be for 24 or 48 hours. I don't know. He would tell me he didn't feel well, and I'd beg him to go to the hospital. I mean, like, you've got to figure this out. I mean, he was not the healthiest man. But he refused. I remember trying to get him off of cigarettes. I tried to get him to, I was like, at least vape. I know it's still terrible, but it's not cigarettes. And refused and stuck in his ways and drank Mountain Dews. But he refused to do anything about it, ever. And then the one that sticks out to me the most in 2018, it had to be a few months before he died, because we were supposed to go to our wedding venue, and he got really sick, and my mom had called me the night before and said that he was going into a diabetic shock or something, but something was wrong with him. And Scott was there. They were trying to get him to the hospital, and I didn't see him until the next day, but I walked in and he was perfectly fine, just sitting up. So it was a shock. I mean, even Chris brought him a Mountain Dew in the hospital. And
Not even a Diet Mountain Dew?
No.
Okay.
And I remember sitting there, and it was like, Daddy, I won't go to this wedding venue if you don't want me to. And he's like, no, baby girl, go. He was always, baby girl, go ahead and do it. Because I always asked his permission for everything. I was like, are you sure it's okay that I go with Mama to go tour this venue? And he said, yes, please go. And same venue, we ended up putting a deposit down, and we never got married there. So yeah, he was not in good health.
So I want to move into the summer of 2018. And so in that summer, you guys would pretty much go up there and have dinners every weekend.
Every weekend, almost, yeah.
And your now stepdaughter, Cameron, she'd go too.
Yeah, if she was with us, yes.
Okay. The jury would have they've met Cameron. And everything, how did it seem when you went that summer? Just normal?
Fine, it was just us there. Scott maybe come in once and leave, but Chris wasn't there unless the girls were there. Emily was in Tennessee, so she was never there. So it was just the four of us. 5 if Cameron went. My mom would cook, and we'd all eat dinner and stay till about 9, 10, and then go home.
So you tell the jury about the weekend before his birthday, from everything you can remember about that.
Well,
just that weekend. Who was there? What was going on?
The Saturday before, we had a big gathering in the house, and everybody was there. Chris, Scott, Emily, Chris Payne, Olivia, me, Chad. I don't think Cameron was there. She wouldn't have been there. And we just had dinner, and my mama cooked, and we had cake, and that was it. And we went home, and then Sunday...
Well, I'll ask you this. I mean, did everything seem normal?
Yeah. Our normal, yeah.
Okay.
Everybody gets along. We had a great time.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Sunday, the next morning, we woke up, and we went to go eat brunch. I don't know what time. Could have been near lunch time. We walked into Jay Christopher's over there, I think closer to their house. Emily was supposed to go back to Tennessee. I was asking to see if she would go with me and Daddy and my mom to go to a wedding store in Roswell to go look at dresses, and we ended up not going. And because she had to go back, and we had breakfast. Yeah, it was just a normal breakfast. I don't know. And then my dad's birthday would have been in the middle of the week, I guess it was. It was a weekday. And we invited everybody. I didn't invite my mom because I thought my dad wouldn't like it. Boy, was I wrong. He was very upset that I did not invite her.
Well, what day was that?
I don't remember. June 27th.
Okay.
I don't know.
So the week before?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Chris texted at last minute, said he couldn't come. He said he was busy or something and he couldn't go. Scott didn't go. He was up there at the house, I guess, but he didn't go. So Chad and I had dinner with him at I can't remember the name of it, a Cajun place in Roswell Road, I believe. And that was his last birthday.
Okay. So let's move on into July the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Things you saw and any interactions you had with your mother and Scott or anybody in the family at that time. So let's go to, did you talk to your mom at all on the 3rd that you can remember?
I can recall because I went through text messages. I'd worked that day, worked at a jewelry store, so I would have worked from 9 to 6. And, I mean, I had texted her all the time.
And you remember y'all were kind of texting to some degree. Chris had either... How did it come to pass that Chris had convinced your dad to pay for his vacation? Did you know anything about that?
My mother had told me that Chris had booked another vacation. In my eyes, Daddy didn't go on vacation. Daddy loved to work. He just didn't do that. So it was kind of shocking. I kind of perceived it as Chris wanted a free hotel room or a condo. In my eyes, but
your brother Chris, he offered, I believe, he was going to on this trip pay for all the food.
I don't know.
Do you believe him if I were to tell you that he said that he was going to pay for all the food and the fishing and everything?
Doubtful.
Okay. Why would that be?
He never had any money to do that. He always had to ask for money for everything. He couldn't fly the girls in from Maine without help. So I don't see how that could have been possible.
Shock you that on the day of the 5th, after you guys had been investigated that day and you talked to Detective Hayes and Kuykendall, that he actually had to borrow $20 from Emily to get home? Did you ever hear about that?
No.
Okay. So you're talking to your mom some about that stuff that day and wedding stuff. Do you remember that?
Probably at that time. I was in full wedding mode trying to plan our wedding because we had the deposit down at Vauxhall.
Okay. But did anything seem out of the normal that day?
No.
Just a normal life, normal communications with your mother?
I was in bliss. I was engaged. I was the happiest I've ever been.
Okay.
Everything was perfect in my eyes.
So the next morning, on the 4th, I believe you guys even had some phone conversations. Do you remember anything about that?
Well, I mean, we had picked up Cameron the night before because it was our time to have her come over, and so we drove up to Jefferson and got her and brought her home, and then we were going to Lake Lanier because that's what we do every year.
And you take your mom every year?
No.
Okay.
Since we were up there the weekend before, we'd asked I asked my mother and Chad asked my dad.
Okay.
And my dad did not want to go. And I told my mom, I said, if you want to go, you're more than welcome. But this is what we're doing. This is our plans.
Okay. What do you remember about inviting her?
I just invited her. I was just like, hey, we're going to go do this. If you want to do something on 4th of July, this is where we'll be. It's fun. It's a fun place.
What did she say?
I think she said, sure, maybe, yeah, I'll go. I mean, she had told me the weekend before she was going to go.
Okay. And then the morning of the 4th, you guys were texting about it and talking about it. Did anything seem weird or out of place?
No. We woke up and we went out there. It was super packed. So
this is Margaritaville.
Margaritaville, yep. The whole beach was packed. All the chairs were taken. And I called her and was like, hey, we're going to go back home and we're going to get our chairs and stuff because there's nowhere to sit. But we put up our little pop-up tent and saved a spot because we lived 5 minutes down the road, not even. And told her we were going to go get our chairs and come back. And I told her she needed to bring one if she had one. And then she said she was working out in the yard and that she would be there later. And I said, okay.
And so she came?
Yeah, eventually around 12, 1 o'clock, I guess it was. It was later.
About noon?
Yeah,
okay.
I would say so.
Somewhere in there. How did she seem? How was her demeanor?
Normal.
What did y'all do?
We roasted on the beach for a while and then went to Land Shark Cafe and because it was unbearably hot. And then we ate lunch. She ate with us. Cameron was there. And we went back to the beach, sat there for a while. I don't know if we did any of the water slides or anything that day, but I think it was 5, 6 o'clock maybe. And Cameron was begging to go be with Addison. And we were like, I don't know, because we had just picked her up the night before.
Would Cameron and Addison, they communicate to themselves via text?
Yeah, they were friends at that time, yeah.
Okay, so they'd already kind of figured out they're going back to grandma's.
Yeah, they were essentially the same age. They like hanging out with each other.
Okay, so I guess Cameron told you, hey, I'm going back with Melody.
No, she asked. And Chad and I were like, I don't know, because we picked her up the night before. And we were like, I don't know. We really didn't want to, but she begged and begged. And so we were like, all right, for one night you can go out there. And Chad was supposed to work the next day, and I had the day off. So I was going to go, and I was like, I'll pick you up, and then we'll go shopping.
And that would have been on the 5th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But back on the 4th, Cameron how did your mom respond when she asked to come over?
She said, okay, have you talked to Addison? And I don't know if my mother talked to Chris or not, but Cameron got in the car with her and they rode back.
Okay. Did y'all have any communication with Cameron that night or the next morning?
I probably wouldn't have. Chad would have.
Okay.
I was more or less, and I still am more or less, Chad's wife. She has a mom, and I didn't mother her by any means, so it would have been Chad that checked up on her.
Secondary parent role, step parent.
Correct.
Okay. But nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Nope. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Okay. So how did it come to pass that you were going to come the next morning and pick up Cameron? Because you were off that day?
I was off that day, so I knew I was going to have to go pick her up. But his father was living with us at the time. He had gotten in an accident and had to live with us because he was in the hospital for a while. So we took care of him. And he asked me that morning if I could drive him over to his friend Debbie's house. So I agreed and took him over there, and could have been 10:30 by the time I actually left the area. I'm not sure. But I drove directly over to my parents' house, and that's when I got there.